Okay, and for this part of the video might be a little bit of noise, but just bear with me and we'll be all right. So we have here that this distinction between creation ex nihilo and theophany. And also we have the bells, which is beautiful for this theme. And therefore, even that matter from which it is read that he made the world is from him and in him, and he is in it in so far as it is understood to have being. This is a quote from the Periphysium that I'm going to read again because it's quite profound, and that's why I'm starting this section with this. And therefore, even that matter from which it is read that he made the world is from him and in him, and he is in it, there's a typo here, insofar as it is understood to have being. What does this mean? I mean, just like, listen to this again. And therefore, even that matter from which it is read in the Bible that he made the world is from him and in him, and he is in it insofar as it is understood as it is understood to have being. So inasmuch as the matter from which he made the world is understood of have being, so anything that makes this matter be is also him. So that means that everything, including yourself, inasmuch as you are of him and in him. Yeah? So this is a little bit of an input from myself as to how I understand this, but it's not too far off. Hey, Walty. So creation, the starting point of the great... So creation is going to be the starting point of the great metaphysical epic that is the Periphysium. The start to understand divine reality. And we have this in the Bible in Romans 1:20, in which St. Paul says, "For from the creation of the world, the invisible things of him are clearly seen, being understood through the things that are made, even his eternal power and Godhead, so that they are without excuse." I'm not sure what excuse here refers to, but it's a very good word to point to the fact that if we are not going to go to ultimate causes and we are going to have some sense of the divine when we do that, it's just simply because there's a refusal on the part of the thinker. Okay, it doesn't mean that it's right, doesn't mean that it's wrong. Yeah, there's many instances where we don't need to go that far. But when we do, and when we talk about it, when we make the ultimate decisions about the world of spirituality, it's, from what I see, a refusal to go there. Yeah? And thus these videos. So the focus is then in the Periphysium, in the right knowledge of things that are. So if we focus on that, we're going to be able to extrapolate things about the divine. We're never going to get to the essence of it because that's unknowable. But we are going to be able to, through the apophatic method, to get to know quite a lot about it that is going to give us insights on then the things of life, the things of nature. God is the cause of causes. Therefore, we can say that it's a creation ex nihilo in this sense. Nothingness as super essential. Not just simply essential, but as superlative, not privative. It's made to be it's made to be meant in the excellent sense. Okay? So the central problem of the periphysium is to determine how what begins to be in time can be eternal. God is nothing, yet God is more than being. God is not thing, is not a thing, is no thing, yet God is the cause of everything. So we have to remember the basics for this division is very important to understand. For Origena is the mind itself, that which the mind can comprehend and can conceptualize belongs to the world of being. And that which transcends the mind's grasp belongs to the separation of nature or into non-being. So notice that this doesn't mean that this non-being doesn't exist, but that is not conceivable by the mind. The conclusion is all things are the same time, eternal and made in the world. Eternal things are made, and made things are eternal. God is all things, therefore, which is the core concept of the periphysium. Okay, so we can affirm that from the point of view of being, everything that is in essence divine. This is a very powerful concept in the periphysium. And Origena was considered later as he was very careful not to be classified as a heretic, but later his books were not accepted. And I found that very interesting. So let's go to the next one. And in the next one, we have that the cause of the universe is going to be given by the Word. So the Word is the cause of the universe. We could say also in terms of Greek philosophy and how it was translated into Christianity as the Logos. So the Word makes all things and made also in all things. Here we have again this counterbalance of apparently contradictory terms, but when put together is the only way that we have in order to talk about the ultimate basis for reality, the ultimate basis for creation, whole nature, everything, which translates later into what the essence of humanity is going to be and the essence of all things. Then in order to understand this, it's very useful to think, for example, of numbers. All numbers are said to be in the monad. Yeah, this will be in the realm of the Neoplatonic philosophy. So, for example, the number 1 is the intrinsic number, is the one and only number which is at the source of every other number. And we can also say that it will be at the core of causality and eternity. So it's eternal in the monad and it's made in multiplicity, in process of God's creative activity, and eternal in time. Therefore, we have that creation ex nihilo, what actually means is creation ex Deo. So creation from nothing is creation from God. How do we know this? Through transcendent negativity, meaning the apophatic methodology of thinking about these very profound things, into the differentiated otherness of being and essence. Yeah? So to make this interlocking between being and non-being, between the things that the mind that can grasp and the things that the mind will never grasp, we have to use the apophatic methodology that takes us to two paradoxical realms which connect and must actually connect. The nothing from which all things came, contemplated in itself, Neither is, nor was, nor shall be. It is none of the things which exist, surpasses them all. We have this in the periphysium itself. But through the creative process, through the will of God, which is different than the essence of God, and yet they're both united within. Yeah, this is just a way of the mind that apophatically thinking about these things. Is sin, the creative process is sin in theophany, which is the birth of God. It alone found in all things, which relates with these things that we just spoke about, that everything that is participates of that being. So there's different ways of saying the same thing. And it just reflects the central dialectic of this work. Creation ex nihilo and divine reality. Nothing becomes all things. God is the maker of all things and is made in all things. This is a very interesting concept in the periphysium, that God, the non-created, the uncreating, actually creates himself through the process of theophany, of creation itself. When he is looked for above all things, he is found in no essence. There is no essence yet. So he's super essential. But when he is understood in all things, nothing in them subsists but himself alone. You might be thinking already, like, what is the relevance of all these paradoxical statements? It's like, why is this important to think about these things? And we are going to get to that. But let me just hint to the fact that we cannot think correctly within the realm of truth about anything in life, the things that we might think is more worth thinking about, the reality that we can see, smell, and touch, and think about the concepts that we have in our own minds and how they relate to reality, if we don't dig this deep. Yeah? If we refuse to go this deep, then everything else that we think about is going to be unrooted. Now, the danger is also that when we make these statements, we get to the conclusion that thinking about anything actually makes no sense. Yeah? No matter how seriously you take it. If you take it very seriously, you have two options. You have the option of realizing that there is a rational understanding that we can achieve about these things, that even if paradoxical, can teach us about reality. Or from this point you can get to the conclusion that reality can only be a scattered sort of entity, and then you get into the whole relativistic mode of looking at things. If you refuse to look into this, then you get you could get into many places, but you could get also into, for example, one big example is scientism, in the sense that, well, we're going to look into things in a scientific way only, but looking at things from that perspective, refusing to get to the core of it, makes us go into reality in a purely materialistic sense, in a purely relativistic sense, in a purely developmental sense, in a purely Darwinian sense. Yeah? And in this way we are also scattered. We cannot get to the core of what things really are, not even the simplest things. And this translates into society, translates into social life, translates into things like freedom, war and peace, rights, the law, everything. Yeah, economics, very much so. So it might seem that this is too abstract, that has no connection with reality, but no. We're looking for the ultimate connection with reality and extrapolate truths from that. Yeah? Not just subjective perceptions of reality, but truths. And this connects, of course, with science. This is not anti-scientific, but is to get to put science in the place where it belongs, which is to help us understanding reality from the truth. Yeah? So whether you're religious or not, these whole metaphysical journeys that medieval thinkers took I have come to realize that it's at the core of what we need today in order to confront the realities and the problems that we are facing. And, well, I'm going to continue. I made it quite long, but hey. So, neither is he this, as he says, but not that. But he is all. Because creation is from the super-essential nothingness of the divine nature, then cannot be contrary to God. So this creation, it cannot be contrary to God. It's the cause of all contraries. God is the cause of all contraries. But these two statements that fit together have its counterbalance statement in order to refer to this essential nature of creation. Creation is other than God, since God became other than God in creating. Yeah? A totally contradictory statement if we forget all the other parts. Remember, we are humans in search for the ultimate reality, and this can only be done this way. Now the question is, can we extrapolate from here into reality and make statements of truth precisely because we are taking this approach? And my contention is that is precisely what we need to do. Yeah? So then all this comes with this big sign into the relationship between cause and effect. Cause and effect are related not in a chain in one directional way, but effect also informs the cause. Yeah? So the relationships of cognition between God, the unknowable event to God's self, and God, the knowable to God's self and other intellects and mind. So when we get to the core dichotomy of anything that you can think of, you need to get to this core and say, well, there is nothing beyond it, but this nothing must be the thing that created everything. You see, it's impossible to talk about these things without accepting paradox. And the acceptance of this paradox has already been in the 20th century expressed in mathematical forms in a way that even, and I want to get from this medieval core thinking into 20th century thinking, which does this in a much more elaborate way. Yeah, and it takes many segues, but one of the most interesting is in the realm of mathematics with Gödel. I will get in a lot of trouble there because I'm not a mathematician. However, I want to understand the concepts in a way that can be expressed in this way and can be extrapolated as to what all these demonstrations mean. Yeah, which I think is very profound. Okay, let's go to number 3. And number 3 here will be this one, this beautiful presentation that I've done here for you. So the unity of God and creature is a strong thing in the Periphysium, absolutely fundamental when we're going to think later about other things in nature, and not just in nature as birds and trees and the role of humans within the nature that we can see with our own eyes, but the nature of what we are, the capacities that we have to think and to feel and for compassion and for love and all these things that are so essential for humans, yeah, they must come from somewhere. Okay, it's very important to understand this, because otherwise, if we go into the materialistic mode of thinking, we might start thinking that humans are something that needs to be transcended from something that actually does not exist, instead of transcend ourselves as already transcendent beings, yeah, connected to God, yeah. And if you have, a lot of people might have a problem with the word God, and that's fine. You can put another names. It's just like, how deep are you ready to go? Yeah. And I'm not going to get too much into that now, but what I see in scientism is a refusal to go there. Not so much refutation of the arguments given when one goes there, but more a refusal to go there. So, okay, so then division of nature itself serves to maintain creation not apart from God. There is an ontological participation of the creature in God. And I think this is a very profound, very original statement that Original does in the Periphysium. Is not necessarily a mainstream Christian view that this would be so. At least not from the point of view of what the Catholic Church will teach you. Yeah. Nothing against that. There's a lot of thinking within the Catholic Church that is absolutely essential. Yeah, we're going to get into that. And he himself considered him Catholic. So this is well within the Christian mode of thinking, proper Christian mode of thinking, but a little bit, it's like sort of in the outskirts. Yeah, it was taken with a grain of salt. So creation is already God deified. Its very identity is God. So creation is divine. That's the thing. It's really, really is divine. So let's continue distinction between the two. The difference in nature due to the fall of human nature from original status. So the fall is going to be mentioned a lot in the Periphysium, as we're going to see. Created world is ontologically external to God because it is rooted in His will, which is different from His nature. Very important distinction. All co-eternal, save for the status of creator and created. So the major distinction here is creator and created. So you are divine in as much as you participate in the essence of God through your essence, but you are not God. Yeah? So very, very, very far away in the complete opposite of what it would mean to be a solipsistic being. Okay? So this truth's basis. So the basis for this truth, basically, this is what it means, is God as cause is made in God's effects. But, and we have always the contradictory statement, God remains above created effects in the darkness and unknowability of God's essence. At the beginning, all these concepts come as contradictory, but then you realize there's no other way to think about this, and we must do think about this. A very beautiful metaphor for these ideas is the following that comes from Maximus the Confessor. Air illuminated by the sun is invisible. It appears to be light. So the essence of God will be air, like air. And then the intellectual mind is capable of seeing the theophany, the birth, the essence of God through the eyes of the intellect. However, it will never capture air itself through the eyes. It captures the light that travels through the air. Okay? So then this will equate to the divine essence, which is invisible in itself, like air is, joined to an intellectual creature. In the light alone is sin. So in the light alone is seen. So you see the light, but you don't see the air, which would be what is sort of sustaining, given the medium in order to travel. Yeah, which gives us a hint towards a concept that has been discarded in physics as the concept of the ether, which I think is very interesting. Then a quote, ineffable descent of the supreme goodness, which is unity and trinity, into the things that are so as to make them to be, indeed so as itself to be. God both is all things and is not all things. All things that can be understood are God's manifestation of God's hidden nature. God manifests in creation. That is true. But God remains transcendently unmanifested, which is also true. Here we have a quote from the Periphysium, which is the most, the list of apophatic statements that is the most obvious one in the Periphysium. So everything understood and sensed is the following: apparition of what is not apparent, manifestation of the hidden, affirmation of the negated, comprehension of the incomprehensible, utterance of the unutterable, access to the inaccessible, the understanding of the unintelligible, body of the bodiless, essence of the super-essential, form of the formless, measure of the measureless, number of the unnumbered, weight of the weightless, materialization of the spiritual, and visibility of the invisible. So all these statements in which God manifests in creation, which is true, and God remains transcendently unmanifested, so neither are true singly, but the dialectical formulation reveals the tension between them and the simultaneous truth of both, by the basic distinction between the divine essence and theophany. Apophatic understanding demonstrates a comprehensive account of reality can never be attained. Eriugena is a Christian Neoplatonist. Yeah, this comes as a conclusion, as where to sort of situate this thinker. Neoplatonist because of the dialectical understanding of divine reality, and Christian for the assertion of God in all things, how the true nature of God affects the creative process. Therefore, God is all things. Next, we're going to talk about the Trinitarian causality of the Word.